Incredible to unstoppable, which means we have with us the amazing Shobhaa Day. She's among India's most popular and gloriously irreverent writers. She's worked in journalism, has been the editor of 3 major magazines, which we all know of, and has written 23 books. The 24th one is in the works. Her books include Socialite Evenings, Starry Nights, Spouse, and Superstar India. Her column in Times of India, Politically Incorrect, carries unapologetic and remarkably candid observations on politics, society, economics, and relationships. And she's going to be here in conversation with Sudha Menon, and they are going to discuss her books, her riveting column, and a life and career that defies convention and boasts absolute splendor, even if politically incorrect. Shobhaa Day, ladies and gentlemen, give her a big round of applause as we invite on stage our guest for this session. And of course, our host for this session, lovely Sudha Menon. Before we begin the session, I would also like a round of applause for Sudha ji one more time. I'll request Urja Singh from Team DLF to felicitate our guests.
So are you ready, Pune, for Shobhaa? Shobhaa loves Pune, and I've been seeing all her posts for the last 2 days. Lots of food posts and lots of people that she's been meeting and making friends with. Is there a connection with Pune?
Sorry to just interrupt, but can we please have a small felicitation? Ma'am, thank you so much for gracing us on this occasion. We absolutely are delighted to have you here at the Deccan Literature Festival.
Namaskar. इतके सगळे लोक आज आलात on a Sunday morning. मला फार बरं वाटतंय. मी राहते मुंबईत, but my heart is in Pune and I feel a Punekar.
Wow.
आणि माझी इच्छा आहे की in the years to come, starting from this next year, 2023, मला हे chance पण मिळेल आणि time पण मिळेल. I have a home in Pune and I'd like to spend much more time because each time I come, मला असं वाटतं की Pune, there are so many Punes. I don't even know 1/100th of all the Punes.
Absolutely.
And it is, for a Maharashtrian like myself, it is a matter of great pride that we have a festival like this in Pune, the seat of learning, the seat of education, the seat of so many great writers and poets and playwrights and painters, a city which has inspired the rest of India, the kind of personalities that continue to emerge from Pune, theatre, movies. इथे काय नाहीये आणि मिसळ पण आहे. All sorts of misals, not just one kind.
Absolutely.
So पुण्याची जी मिसळ आहे, there's no comparison. It wins hands down over any other misal that I've eaten. And then I tasted something which I had not tasted in Mumbai. It's not vada pav, which is good.
Yes.
It's called
Kachi dabeli.
That's
Kachi
it.
dabeli. Oh, wow.
That's it.
Yes.
That's
Kachi dabeli. It's an amazing thing. And when I think of people swooning over burgers, I say here is this Indian burger which is just so much better.
so much tastier and so much healthier.
Absolutely.
Less anything that's toxic into it. It's
Yes.
fresh, it's there, it's filling, it's brilliant. I just feel like a lot of other things about Pune and in Pune, maybe we don't know how to project ourselves sufficiently. We don't know how to highlight so much about Pune that can be highlighted for the rest of the world. And it's about time we said, Pune is...
Let's go.
Let's just do it because it's underrated and people still think of it as somehow like a poor cousin of Mumbai, which is anything but. And there's so much ignorance. Even with my own friends' circle, they have no idea. When I bring them to Pune, they say, oh my God, there's this, oh my God, there's that. I mean, wake up. Where are you living?
Absolutely.
Wake up to the beauty and richness
There
of
is
a
so
city
much on offer
and the
here.
history and everything. So I'm very, very happy to be here, and that was just my little ode to Pune, because from my heart, because that's how I feel. I'm going to be celebrating my 75th birthday next month in Pune. So I told those people in my life who matter to me, my friends, my family, that I want you to be with me in a city that I feel good in, that I see as home. Anyone can, I could easily have a celebration in Mumbai or anywhere else, but I was very specific because I want those people who are coming from across India, a few coming from overseas, to know what Pune is and to feel about Pune what I feel about Pune. So the party is going to be in Pune, that's for sure.
Wow, that sounds fabulous, Shobhaa. And I also wanted to tell you that she's, Jan, she turns 75, and she's celebrating it with a memoir, a new memoir. How crazy and how fabulous is that? So let's have a few thoughts on that.
Well, the idea of marking significant birthdays, when I turned 50, I did a memoir then. I did a memoir at 60, I did one at 70, and 75 seems like a good year because who knows, 80 is still 5 years away. And I have a lot to say. I hope I'm still around at 80, but this is not a traditional memoir. It's called Insatiable, My Hunger for Life. So it's really about 1 year of my life, starting from Jan of 2021 and leading up to now, Jan of 2023. I mean, this 12-month period in which there was a great deal of introspection, but there was also a great deal of freedom and happiness and letting go and coming to terms with many things emotionally, coming to terms with change, within family structures, what happened to each one of us during the pandemic, because it was a turning point, whether we acknowledge it or not as such. The pandemic didn't leave a single human being untouched. We're all completely transformed in some ways, big and small, after the pandemic. It gave us time to pause and to think about how fragile life is, how beautiful life is, and how lucky we are to have survived such a cataclysmic, world-changing curse. I can't think of any other word. And that we're all here today is in itself a celebration.
Blessing. Yeah.
So that's the mood of the book.
It's a fantastic idea, and I remember the last time I met you at a literature festival in Pune, you had written 70 and to hell with it, and I had written feisty at 50, and we posed together, and somebody said, wow, this is a great way to mark, milestones in your life. Yes. And Shobhaa, I just want to tell you that this is special for me today because my mom turned 75 this year, and she's here in the audience, and she was so delighted. She was so delighted to know that, I'm in conversation with...
Uberana, please, we'd like to wish you happy birthday. Happy birthday. Namaskar.
So I told her this is what life can be, and I would love to come, for you to
so
come
happy
and...
that she's here. Really happy.
So yes, I just want you to take, if you leave aside the pandemic, and I know that the pandemic affected you in ways which actually made you write books about it. Yes. But I just want you to look back at this journey of 75 years and tell us how has that journey been? What has been, the huge milestones, the things that really made you who you are? And for, when you said that, when you spoke about being Maharashtrian and, Marathi Mulgi, I want to know how that Marathi Mulgi made it from, been born 48 and to 2023 now. What is it that makes you who you are, Shobhaa?
My God, I mean, I surely can't answer that in so easily.
Yeah, if you can say,
it's too organic, the whole journey, as you keep calling it, the milestones. There are far too many in these 75 years. But to keep the Marathi Mulgi in me alive has been a very, very conscious decision. It's my identity that I'm extremely proud of. माझं मराठी कच्चं असेल, but what I feel, I think, is in Marathi. भाषा नहीं है, I don't have the skill. But often emotions dominate mere words. What you feel is, at the end of it, who you are, what makes you. So having said that, my journey is way too complex and complicated and tumultuous and fun to encapsulate in a very short period of time. But I'd like to answer your question about the pandemic writing, because for all of us, we were looking for coping mechanisms. All of us were feeling a sense of being trapped or confronted with something which was so beyond our reality, beyond our imagination. And we devised our own ways to cope and to deal. For me, as a writer, my therapy was through writing. So I started to write at a pace which was almost manic. Even for me, I write almost 2,000 words every single day. But during the pandemic, I was writing one complete short story a day. So I did a volume, it's called Lockdown Liaisons. It was published, I was very clear with my publishers that it has to be published during the pandemic, not looking back, but as it was happening.
Lived experience.
Yeah, it's a lived experience. Thank you, nice phrase. So that had to be captured because a lot of people are struggling to find or give some expression to what they were going through. And through these short stories, I myself found a way of dealing with something that nothing had prepared me for. So 4 stories a week were being published online. And once we were kind of past the pandemic, it was published in the form of a physical book. And since then, it has traveled the world over as 4 of the selected stories transformed into plays by Lilette Dubé. And I hope she brings it to Pune because it's something that I think I've given so much of myself, and so has Lilette and the team. And they're easy to travel because they're all monologues. And that was the one volume, and there was another volume which was a novel, which is called Srilaji. And both were with the same publisher, but with different editors. Srilaji, I don't know, in the course of writing, it was the tail end of Srilaji. I wanted to wrap it up and get on with something else. It was almost done. And Srilaji herself, during the pandemic, kept turning sexier and sexier. The book completely took off on its own. And maybe for me, it was some kind of escape or cathartic, because then I started to inhabit Srilaji's world. And it turned into a very different book. The last half is definitely, I would say, I would attribute it to the pandemic effect. I enjoyed writing it, and I hope that the readers have enjoyed reading it.
So this brings me to a topic which is always associated with your writing. You know, I remember as a young journalist, I would talk to you many times, and I remember also that she is so disciplined and she's so particular about her work that if there was a telephonic interview, you would say, Sudha, please fax me the thing you have written, and I will go through it and send it back. So I think that's part of who you are, that discipline and that being particular about what is there. But around that time also was, you know, when somebody wrote something about your book, a review or something, there would always be this, oh, and she writes about sex. You know, that underlying thing is, oh, she writes about sex, and her book has too much sex, and all of those things. So I want to ask you that when you wrote those first books, we lived in an India which was not so, you know, not so much open, not so liberalized and progressive as we are. And I do think that even if we say we are progressive now, there is always that undercurrent of judgment. how did you deal with those initial years? Now I know that you couldn't care less. Now you're 70 and, to hell with it.
I didn't care even back then. These were the books I wanted to write. I wasn't writing to either impress anyone or titillate anyone. I saw no reason at all why the physical aspect of a woman's life that I was not entitled to touch on that at all. I felt very strongly about it. I still do, because society, not just in India, we can be more prudish than some other societies, but the double standards do exist across the world, that there are certain topics that women are allowed to write. Mainly, society is very comfortable with women writing about suffering. If you suffer, they applaud you. If you don't suffer, there's got to be something wrong with this woman. She's got to be a sexual deviant. She's got to be a pervert. She's got to be frustrated. And none of these questions have ever been applied to men who have tackled the same topic, but from a male point of view, and why not? So even the Kama Sutra was written by a man, and all of it deals with what a man feels during the intimate acts of love. Very rarely does one ever get a perspective from a female point of view, that what do you feel? Most of the time it's tedium and boredom, but even that is not allowed.
You wrote about that.
Yeah, but you can't say it because it's very threatening, that the three-letter word, sex itself, that and God, God, are the two words that terrify society and anyone who deals with it in an upfront way. So it was not something I did to take some great position and wave some flag. These were the books I wanted to write. These were the stories of women. My women were all protagonists who had their own journey, which was not always very pleasant, as it isn't most of the time for a lot of women in our society, even to this day and age. I think it's important to reflect women's voices with all their complexities, with all the downfall, pitfalls, but also the joys and also the pleasure. And the sensual aspect of a woman's life, which is always described even by our great poets in a highly romanticized way, which is beautiful and very, very inspiring. But there is also the other, which is more raw and deserves to be equally heard. So that was it. I wrote, and out of all the 23 books that I have written, the ones that still cause comments and eyebrows to be raised, I think those were, out of the 23, there are 7 novels. Out of the 7 novels, maybe 3 have a female voice speaking about her body in an explicit manner. The rest are not explicit. But when you talk about that quota and people saying, why is there so much? It's not like, it's like a ration shop where you're going and you're deciding this much is acceptable and this much is too much. And I should, curtail this or badhao something else. It's not like that. A writer writes his or her truth. And if that truth works, great.
I think it's, do you think it's something to do with how dare a woman have so much fun? How can she expect so much fun?
Well, fun is another 3-letter word. And I think women should have as much fun as they can in their lives, as should men, because before we know it, poof, it's gone. It's over.
Yes, as we all realized over the last 2 years, yes. Yeah. It's interesting that you should speak about that, because in the previous session also we spoke about Monika Ji is here and she read some poems and she says that all that suffering she saw, all of those experiences gathered as she tried to contain the COVID thing where she was at work, she says it made her think differently, and the writing that came after that is so much different. Yes. I particularly wanted to ask you about, everybody knows that you edited 3 magazines, a lot of Bollywood. Your love-hate relationship with Bollywood is the stuff that everybody knows and loves. Like every time you write, your columns will always have some reference, to Bollywood and something. So just wanted to get your thing about, what has it been like?
I think Bollywood has not been sufficiently deconstructed and analyzed academically. Anywhere else in the world, in Hollywood, you'll have hundreds and hundreds of books about the movies, about the making of movies, about directors, about movie stars, about the gossip element in the early years, now how it's treated, the relationship of movie stars with social media, etc. All the changes in the movie world and the movie business. And here we're talking about a movie industry which is over 100 years old. And sometimes I feel we have not given it as much respect. We've treated it a bit too lightly. I'm talking about Bollywood specifically.
Yes.
Not Marathi, not Malayalam, not Bengali, none of those. They come into, fall into their own category. But Bollywood has been demonized and trivialized. Bollywood is one of the most important subcultures of our time. What we see in those movies, however idiotic it may appear, is still telling us something about ourselves.
Society, yeah.
It's a mirror. If we're singing these songs, some of which have lyrics which make zero sense at all, even the nonsensical lyrics are telling you something about a society which is communicating differently. So when I asked Javed Akhtar about his big hit to which Madhuri had danced so wonderfully and brought that alive, Ek Do Teen Char. I mean, that song, if you actually break it up, doesn't make any sense at all. But in that context, the way it was interpreted by a great actress, she's absolutely phenomenal. And she so easily can slip into what she chooses to do, has meaning. Even today, if you see a Drishyam, with all its fault lines, there's still something in that story which is telling us something about ourselves. My relationship with Bollywood has always been very clear. I leave them alone and I hope they leave me alone. So,
That's a good one.
yes, so when I do comment on whatever it is, it's done completely impartially and impersonally, as a viewer, as any of you would watch a movie or watch Ranveer Singh or follow their lives, which we all do. We may pretend we don't,
Oh, we all do,
but
yes.
we all jump on. And even if you don't wish to follow it, on your phones it keeps popping up.
Yes.
So, and for example, I'd written about Rakhi Sawant a long, long time ago in one of my books, I think when I turned 60. So that's 15 years ago when she was just emerging on the scene. And I'd said, India is experiencing a Rakhi Sawant moment. There was nothing like her. So audacious, so out there, so bold in what she was saying and doing. Now this new pretender, Urfi Javed, is like, a poor version of the original. And she has to appear naked or say in public to gain any attention. And even that is saying something, that a young girl today can walk out on the road dressed in very little and make money from that.
Yes.
And become what is called a celebrity. So the word celebrity itself has to be understood. What is celebrity? Is it achievement? Is it success? Is it beauty? Is it talent? Or is it just being known for being known? So I understand each time any of these ladies appear in public, they are also performing a job according to them.
Being the influencer. Or
Whatever it may be, they have the right to choose. No one is putting a gun to her head and saying, walk out naked on the road. Right?
She's true, yeah.
There are people who follow her on Instagram. No one
millions,
is
I believe.
Millions. There are photographers who are one step behind her. And she is talking to them. She was, I think, the only star who distributed laddus or pedas or kaju katli or whatever to all the photographers, the paps as they're called, when they were they were being given a really hard time by Jaya Bachchan. And this young girl was smart enough to speak up on their behalf, saying that they're doing their jobs, they're young professionals doing their jobs, and she showed her appreciation by distributing sweetmeats, which was appreciated. Whether it's a shrewd tactic or whatever it may be, she's not harming anybody as far as I can see. It's her right to walk and ply her whatever she wishes to the way she chooses to. So Bollywood is also uneasy with people like her, because they don't know where to put her. But they're okay with, say, a Malaika Arora because she's one of them.
Yes.
So the day Urfi makes it to Karan Johar's show, suddenly her entire image will undergo a transformation.
She'll become legit.
She'll become legit.
Yeah.
So how much power do we know, how it works, how insidious it is, what the Me Too movement, how and why it collapsed after names were named. And we have Sajid Khan in The Big Boss, despite all the trolling, but no one is taking it any further. So there is some amount of, in every sphere, not just in Bollywood, there is the double standards, the hypocrisy, there's the cozy club of people who are in and those who are out, and just a handful of Bollywood producers and directors decide who's in and who's out. So, you know, Rakhi Sawant has taken them all on, and so has Kangana.
Yes.
And I like that.
Yes.
I admire the girls for doing it and continue to fight for their own individuality. Both have paid a price. Kangana is persona non grata.
Absolutely.
She says, I don't care, I'll make my own films, I'll write my own films, I'll act in my own films.
And do a
she'll
good
write
job
her own
of it.
And own all of it. And put her, possibly her own money on the line. Now that takes guts. So there are women in the industry, and there have always been women in our industry, like Devika Rani, for example, who did buck the system, who did challenge the status quo and the stereotypes. And I wish there were more of them, because Bollywood would become a very different place, because there are women who are truly empowered in every sense. They're rich, they're beautiful, they're very successful, but they still continue to play ball with the the boys' club. When they can establish a girls' club of their own, and the high table can be their table, they don't have to join anyone else's high table. Till that happens, we'll have to continue with this kind of patronizing attitude.
I think that's something that was really, really good to hear. How would you rate, like, who would you think are these women who have the capability, the capacity to do this girls' table that you spoke of? Do you think anybody is there who...
Well, the first name that comes to mind is, of course, Deepika Padukone, because today she is one of the highest paid stars in the world. Her net worth, because of the endorsements.
Yes.
She has, whether it's from Cartier to Louis Vuitton to all the top brands, international brands, are in, well, Deepika has bagged all of them, most of them. She is an independent person. She earns her own livelihood. She has her own place that belongs to her. She can call the shots with her directors. She can, if she so chooses, meet other like-minded ladies. There are a few. There's Gauri Shinde, for example. There are several women directors, but who still don't get that kind of a chance. People still will not back or give them money, big budgets. They will give it to a disaster like Brahmastra and then try and pretend it's a super hit, where it isn't.
Yes.
So you can manipulate things. These ladies would never have the chance that an Ayan Mukherjee does.
Absolutely.
Because he's got everyone backing him. So things are changing, but I wish they'd change a little faster.
I remember this conversation with Farah Khan a few years ago when I was interviewing her for a book. And she said, till I made Happy New Year, which many might say, whatever they say about the movie, but it did make a lot of money. She breached the 100 crore club. And she said that you might laugh at my movies, but do remember that the first movie made by a woman that made 100 crores was me. And after that, people actually started giving money to female directors for making this. So I think that there is always the right time, the right place, and the right person. And it is interesting that you should speak about, women coming into their own. Not all of them, but some of them in Bollywood. I remember this conversation you had I was looking at some of your past interviews, and you spoke about this time when women really did not have any choices in Bollywood. And you were speaking about that incident with Zinat Aman, and at the lobby of the Taj, where she was actually bashed up by her then boyfriend Sanjay Khan. And you were so upset and you were so vocal about the fact that not a single person stood up and said this is not right and somebody should do something about this. So Yeah,
It is something that I still find very baffling because a lot of women in Bollywood, even today, are in abusive relationships. Even someone like an Aishwarya Rai, can you imagine?
Yes.
Turned up at the Filmfare Awards function with an arm in a sling and a black eye. So it's still something I cannot stomach as to why these women take it, why they don't speak up, why they don't report abuse. Because if everybody keeps quiet, then what happens is what happened with Shraddha last week, 10 days ago. Because there was no support group for her. She was alienated from her family. Her friends were the only ones, a few friends, who suddenly woke up and said, where is she? I mean, how is she dropped off the radar completely? But the Aftab Poonawala and the Shraddha thing for me is very significant in what it's saying about the disintegration in our society of young people who are truly lost. They're alienated from their families mainly. There's no communication that Shraddha's father would not think it odd that he has not spoken to her, she's not spoken to him in months.
For months, yeah.
He didn't know which city she was in. He thought she was in Bangalore. This lack of communication is something we need. It's a wake-up call for parents and for young people alike, because it's very easy to be judgmental and say, oh, these people, the young are so reckless and they're so selfish, and oh, it's not that. It's they don't have enough confidence that if they share something with their parents or their friends group, they will still find acceptance. And the fear of rejection is so overwhelming that it leads to, I mean, like Shraddha, there are thousands of Shraddhas. And we would have imagined that Nirbhaya would have been the turning point in India, but it wasn't. So there is a lot that is worth thinking about, particularly when it comes to our young, because they are our future. And they need to be nurtured, they need to be understood, not judged. And if we keep judging our young, more and more of Shraddhas will happen.
It is, thanks for sharing that, Shobhaa. And I know that you have a very, very close relationship with your children, even your grandchildren. And I see, pictures, and you write for them, you write about them. And so what is it that as a society we can do to, change what's happening? We are quick, as older people, we are too quick to judge. On the other hand, I think the older generation finds it very difficult to understand the lives and times and lifestyles of the young. So what is it that as a society we can do to change this? There are a lot of young people here, so, and I can see a lot of mothers, grandmothers. So
I don't know what we can do to change it. We can change ourselves. I think that makes much more sense. We can understand a world which is not something maybe we are comfortable with, but change has always been a part of evolution. I'm sure my parents did not understand some of the decisions I took. They certainly didn't, I know. But did I ever feel that they stopped loving me because of it? Never. Did I ever feel I'll have to run away from home or lie to them because they will not accept my life or my decisions? And a lot of the decisions were completely at a variance to all that they'd hoped for my life. And my choices were radical. But I never ever felt unloved. I think what young people need to feel is loved. And we can only do that through over-communication, because under-communication can lead to consequences that can be really tragic. So we need to keep talking, keep up a conversation with our loved ones, our colleagues, partners in life. And that's a 4-letter word, talk.
yes.
Very important one.
She actually wrote a book, when she turned 60, Shobhaa actually wrote a book called Speed Post, which was a letter to her children. Talking about, the things that are really important for a mother to tell her children and for the children to know. And I think I wrote a book called Legacy, which was the same, letters from parents to their daughters, because my daughter was turning 21 then. And I really want to tell everybody, if we put so much of our lives on Instagram and Facebook and all of that, if we could take 5 minutes out of our day to talk to your parent And if the parent can take 5 minutes of their lives, because most parents now have their own things to do, and tell their children that they are loved, I think that itself would be a big change.
But in our community, our society, sorry, not community, to actually articulate to your parents or even to your children, these 3 simple words that I love you, I care for you, is just something that's not acceptable. Yes. For Maharashtrians, and I speak for myself, I think there's too much stiffness, शिष्टपणा ज्याला म्हणतात, सांगायचं नाही, बोलायचं नाही. उगीच कशाला, त्यांना काहीतरी त्यांचं डोकं फिरेल. कशाला इतकं पॅम्परिंग आम्ही करतोय ना, बस ते पुरे आहे. But we will not say it. We will demonstrate it, but not say it.
Yeah.
Not say it. And I think it's time we broke through that and started expressing our feelings with an open heart.
I think there is nothing that a tight hug can't solve with our children.
Maharashtrians don't hug. It's considered too intimate. They can't handle it.
लोक काय म्हणतील?
नाही, लोक काय म्हणतील नाही. मी स्वतःला काय म्हणते? What am I doing? There's so much self-consciousness in a small gesture like that. So I grew up with it, so I know what it's like.
Okay, so that there itself is a life lesson, that do tell your children and do hug your children and say the 3-lettered word more. So I want to come to your most favorite thing. You mentioned that you write 2,000 words every single day, and as a writer, I'm awed because I sometimes find it difficult to even write 500 words, largely because I lack the discipline to write that much every day. How do you do it, Shobhaa? And also writing Politically Incorrect, which is your very, very popular column, for years at a stretch. How do you keep yourself on track? And there are a lot of writers and young writers who are aspiring to do what you're doing. How do you do it? What is it that is required to make sure?
Some of those columns are actually 50 years old, 40, 45 years old, without a break. And I like that. And I like that because I have succeeded, maybe accidentally, to communicate what I need to say in a column to 2 generations after the generations I started writing for. That in itself is very exciting. It keeps me on my toes. Because in today's very crowded field, and anybody and everybody who has a Twitter account or Instagram or Facebook can call themselves an instant journalist, an instant commentator, and why not? That is how democratic the space is. And just today I've written for Sunday Midday, which is a column by invitation, which was about the possible death of Twitter. I said, Twitter gela ta kai hoil, jitter yel, ani kai yel. It doesn't mean that the world will stop spinning, it'll be replaced. So, but a lot of people whose entire identity is invested in social media should just step back a little bit. So what I want to tell young writers is, relevance is very important. You cannot be talking about your past because, frankly, no one's interested. It's all about today and now. It's different if you're a historian and you're writing academic pieces on a subject that you know thoroughly. But it's self-indulgent to use that column space to only discuss your own preoccupations, your own vanities, your own concerns, and say ki मी जेव्हा लहान होती तेव्हा असं नव्हतं. Of course नव्हतं. I mean, that's understood. It's understood, what life has changed and life will continue to change. You have to be plugged in you have to be able to listen attentively to what even a child is saying, because what that child is saying is more important than what someone your own age might be telling you. Because those are words you know. But most people don't take children seriously. They don't even listen to them. They are dismissed. Like, you're a nuisance, go away.
Yeah.
But so often, what they're saying so truthfully, because there are no filters when a child is speaking. And so much of truth, even about yourself, emerges from a child's mouth. So, for example, when one of my children she calls me Mrs. Nani. It's very cute.
Yeah.
Or sometimes she says Madam Nani. And she doesn't mean it like that, but maybe she hears other people calling me or addressing me like that. So she doesn't know that I find it very sweet, so I don't discourage her. It's nice because children are your ultimate reality checks. They tell you things fearlessly which your colleagues never will, or your
Even the
partner
spouse
never
doesn't,
will.
yeah.
Never, never, never. We're so busy being diplomatic. We're so busy not hurting anyone's feelings. But sometimes you need to hear that from a child who loves you, but is telling you, listen, you're completely out of line. So I get ticked off by my children, by my grandchildren, and their friends, and whosoever, 20 times a day. And of course, my husband, they're all my censor board. They all have varying opinions. And every morning, I sometimes feel afraid to wake up and see the messages that have come, maybe as a reaction to something I've tweeted or a column they've read. Or it could even be a photograph which they don't like on Instagram. So you have to, writers, have to read a lot. And I was very lucky that as a child, from a middle-class bureaucratic family, my parents certainly didn't have money to buy me what I see other parents today buying their kids iPhones. For an 8-year-old, I think it's obscene. But that's today. In my time, they would give me books. I was surrounded, I grew up with books. And I was encouraged to read, not directly said, "Ite basani vats," but they were there. The books were there. Yeah. So I would say for any writer today, if you have not read the classics, that's a big gap in your basic attitude towards writing and expressing yourself, because you will always learn something from the great masters. And that's why they are masters. And if you want to improve yourself as a writer, you have to just keep reading. And that reading and that learning can never, ever stop. There's no cutoff point for knowledge. There's no cutoff point for curiosity. There's no cutoff point for learning. You should be learning till your last breath. Everything should be teaching you something. So for me, that's really the most important, what I would say is, and discipline, which is something that is acquired. You have to work at it. So I can never, ever claim to myself, mainly, that, like you're having a bad hair day, you're having some kind of writer's block. There's no such thing. If there is that block, just kick it out of the way and get down to work. And one word, one sentence at a time, and you see the page fill up, that's your commitment to what you do. That's your commitment as a writer. And you cannot forget that.
What does a typical day in Shobhaa Day's life look like? Because you seem to be doing so many things, Shobhaa. So you look at, I think you just look at your Insta page, and there are like dozens of things in a day. So this 2,000 words happen when?
They're not happening in Pune.
No, I know.
I can tell you that. I'm here. But my average day is really nothing like what you may imagine it to be. It's far from glamorous.
No.
I sit in my faded kaftan, often with oil in my hair, my chashma on my nose. I get to work by 10:30 in the morning, and I keep writing with a short break till pretty much late in the evening. I do not write at night, late night. I like to write during the day from my dining table, because that in itself is a challenge. I like to be at the center of the home to see स्वयंपाकघरात काय चाललंय, भाजी कुठली आहे.
You still...
all that. Oh yeah, oh yes. I like to monitor all of it. And as bindi kashi kapli hai, all of it. So it's a full life. It's a rich life on so many levels. But if you were to ask me the most important components for me emotionally, resource, it has to be my children. So I get energy from them. They are young. Their worlds interest me far more than the world of my age group. And I like to know what they are watching and watch it with them if possible, go out with them because they are the best company. They are really wicked and have a sense of humor which is very sharp. They're very on the ball. They know what's going on, whether it's in politics or sports or movies or culture or music. I actually love the world of the young. I find it so energizing, so full of hope, so full of ideas, so full of newness. And my own age group I find jaded, sometimes very bitter, always looking back negatively at something that didn't happen in their lives, didn't work their way. And that bogs me down. I think each one of us has had a shot at our lives to live our lives the way we choose to. That choice, that word is very important. That choice is always with us, always. It comes with sometimes a big cost. I mean, some of the choices I've made in my life have cost me plenty. But I don't regret them because it was my choice, it was no one else's. So I own my life, all of it, with all its flaws, its fault lines, its downfalls, everything, because I chose. And that word should empower each and every person in here and anywhere. When you choose, the responsibility of that choice rests with you. Take
Absolutely.
it and deal with it.
I remember reading J.K. Rowling once. I actually attended her commencement lecture at Harvard, and she was there, and yard full of young people, and she talked about the hardships in her life and her failed marriage and poverty. And then she said, at 40, I woke up and I realized that there should be a expiry date for how much you will blame your mother for what happened to your life. And that, I think, is very true of
I couldn't, that's like an echo chamber that I need to play out to many people I know about, stop it. Take responsibility for yourself. Yes, how much are you going to blame your mother? All your life you're going to say, Aini tasa khilana hai, asa khilana hai. Grow up,
Yes. There is something that I wanted to ask you. The world knows you as Shobhaa Day, and she's always gorgeously put together. She's having, she's on cruises, and she's with all the film walas, and she's eating.
No, I'm never with film walas.
Okay.
Two people I avoid, politicians and film walas.
Okay.
I'm never with them.
So she's on cruises, and she's at very, very sophisticated, places, and she's eating gorgeous food. Now, you just spoke to us about the real Shobhaa, the one who's, involved in bhendi kashi kapli aaj, gharat kai challe. Does it fatigue you? Does it exhaust you to be this person that the world imagines you are? All good hair and
not
good
at all. It's not my problem, it's the world's problem. Why should I make it mine?
So, yeah.
I'm just myself. I'm just myself. I'm not trying to be anyone else.
You're just, I think the liberty of being you have chosen that. That's your...
Oh, most definitely, consciously.
What is the legacy that you want to leave for your younger ones? You have a large family. You have 6 children, 6 grandchildren, last count. I don't know whether...
7, and there may be an 8th one on the way while we speak. Grandchildren, I mean.
Yeah, so it's really something that, each one of us wish in some way to leave some sort of a legacy for, it might not be anything grand, but you still want to be giving something to your younger ones that...
The word legacy I have problems with because I'm not Amitabh Bachchan. So it's a very pompous word, and I find it comes with a lot of weight of me manje kon, maji legacy manje kai. I've never felt like that. I've lived my life, and that's enough for me. And I'm not about to construct a legacy because that's very artificial. It's also narcissistic. And you wish to be perpetuated in some form or remembered in some way. To me, it has never mattered. When I end, it's over. It's over. I do not think that मी गेल्यानंतर काय होईल, माझ्या मुलांना कसं वाटेल, माझी पुस्तके कोण वाचणार की नाही वाचणार. No, none of it. I've written them. It would be great if they outlive me, but even if they don't, the purpose of writing those books was not to create a legacy. Legacy is something that is, it's a very profound and deep word. And no person can set out to create it. It's something that either happens because the way the person has lived their life or what they may have contributed. Like you can ask that of, say, Satyajit Ray. His films are his legacy. But I'm not conceited enough to say my books are my legacy. Neither am I emotionally over-sentimental enough to say my children will be my legacy. I mean, then all our children are each person's legacy. So the word, to me, doesn't have much of a meaning. I just hope that I have tried to live my life with integrity and truth, speak on behalf of women a lot, and men when needed. They need it less. But definitely to speak on behalf of those who may not have a voice, and a lot of the time those happen to be women, and I will continue to do that. And hope that just as I found my voice at a very early age, that every woman, and actually every man, should find his or her voice, because that is something which we are in complete control of. And if we have the opportunity to use that voice to even transform one single life, or even not transform it, but to live your life in a way that there's a beautiful Japanese book. It's worth reading, and I would strongly, strongly recommend it. I'm sure a lot of you have read it, called Ikigai. And it's a whole philosophy of how to lead your life in a more meaningful, more conscious way, where you're aware of your place, but you're not overwhelmed by it. You're living in the moment. You're grabbing that moment and being a part of it, which is enriching you, but also enriching those in your life. So, yeah, for me, that voice, I hope, remains strong, undiminished, unsuppressed, till my last breath.
Wow. Thank you. That is really, really special to hear from you. Thank you. Just as a off note, she might say that she's not left a legacy, but her books are the topics of, I think, 100 dissertations. And it's taught as curriculum in some very, very prestigious universities across the world. So there itself is a legacy she won't acknowledge.
No, it's not that. I feel wonderful when I hear it, but it's not why I wrote the books. I wrote the books to share what I wanted to share. That they became part of, and so dissertations and so on, is something that is a bonus, but not my purpose for writing.
One last question, and there are so many young, hopeful faces here, and I have this thing, because you said that you often are, you are always proud to be the voice of women who don't have that platform. I really want you to, if there is something, a little message or a little pointer that you want to give. No, you don't want to. Okay, so I think
that's sort of gyan giving.
Not gyan. It is just no, not gyan at all. Just
no. I think self-belief. It's easier said. It's two small words, but for a lot of women, that self-belief is often shaken by others around them, and they allow it to happen. So as long as a woman is conscious of her own values, her own system, and believes strongly enough in whatever it is that she wants for herself, her dreams, her aspirations, whatever choices she makes in life, that self-belief is what will see her through life, which is not always easy and can be very harsh on a lot of women. And I was deeply, deeply touched by a story I heard last night from a very young person. And that has haunted me enough that I couldn't sleep last night. I was awake till 5 in the morning, wondering how a beautiful, educated, young professional could allow herself to be subjected to what this girl was subjected to, including abuse. And it takes a lot of courage for women in those circumstances to follow through with their own self-belief. But if they have the support of family, believe me, it's the difference between being a Shraddha and being alive. So that's a very strong message, if there is a message to women, that never ever let yourself down, never ever let anyone make you feel less about yourself. It's very important.
on that note, I think we come to the end of today's discussion. Thank you so much, Shobhaa, for being frank and fearless and politically incorrect. Thank you very, very much.
Shobhaa Day and Sudha Menon, ladies and gentlemen. One more time, come on. Big round of applause. It's not every day when we get to see Shobhaa Day here in Pune. And she's waving Monika ma'am's book. She's saying, go get your copies. I want to tell you something interesting. If you want to pick the book, it's available outside. And as promised, the authors will be happy to sign them for you. Even Sudha Menon's books are going to be outside now, just outside the auditorium. If you get it, she's available for some time to sign these books.